live things. Like there's one doc I follow, a doctor. He does live Q&As from a treadmill, and he answers the live stream where people answer or ask him questions like, what's a good cholesterol number? I love that, doctor. If you have a live audience, that's great. I am searching for a live audience, so I go on live, and if someone catches me, wherever you are, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, uh, we're live. We're live. I'm talking to people. We're going to have a guest coming up, Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez, because we haven't done this in a while. I mean, really live. I mean, every other day or so. But I'm in New York, and I'm in New York because I'm doing this show. Emil Amok, lost NPR host, found under St. Mark's. It's the Under St. Mark's Theater. And if you followed my saga, I've been preparing for this show for the last couple of months. I have no idea about the Under St. Mark's Theater. I thought, well, St. Mark's, it's got to be a church. I was preparing jokes about the gospel. I mean, because it's Lent, I was going to tell jokes about St. Mark's or maybe St. Matthew or Luke or something. And this is not in a church. It's not even underneath the church. Uh, it's underneath a tattoo parlor that says Fun City. And so I'm thinking, I got to write new jokes. I got to get rid of the gospel St. Mark jokes, maybe under a church. But so under St. Mark's has been a great experience. We've had nice size crowds for it's very intimate theater. But I've been calling out to my friends online saying, hey, this is a show you got to experience online, my live stream. And the next shows are coming up March 3rd and 4th. And all you got to do is go to Frigid.NYC, Frigid.NYC, or go to amok.com, my site, click on the link. That'll take you to this site. And this site's important because it'll get you to Emil Amok, Lost NPR host, found under St. Mark's, which is the ticketing site. And you can read all about it to get the prices, right? We've got two more shows, March 3rd and 4th. March 3rd, it's only 55 minutes long. Maybe it goes 60, but that's about it. And, and we've gotten good reviews. One person reviewer here in New York said, must see. Another said it was uh, fantastic or something. A fantastic something. He said something, a word like that. With reviews, you just pull out the one word. Fantastic. He could have said, but terrible. But fantastic, he said. Um, so we've gotten, fairly good reviews. And then, of course, to add to the other reviews, one reviewer said, charismatic Guillermo's life is one worth exploring. And another one said, from the Orlando Weekly, said, stand up, monologue, rant, enjoy trying to keep pace with Guillermo's brilliant mind. Funny, poignant. Anyway, you go down here to the calendar, right? You got to scroll down. This is one of those sites you got to scroll down. And then look at the remaining days, March 3rd and 4th. That's it. March 3rd and 4th. That's it. So you got to click on, say, Friday night, tomorrow. And look, it's at 8:10 Eastern time. Notice 8:10 Eastern. So if you're in California, that's 5:10, right? It's a perfect sort of Marienda style show, right? You can, well, this is if you see it in person. And if you're in California, you're not going to see it in person because I'm in New York. So you got to click the 8:10 Eastern time, watch from home, catch up. Oh, look, someone's calling now. That is bad. We can't talk to anyone while I'm on the while I'm here with you. I mean that would just be terrible. Anyway, so 8:10 p.m. Eastern time, watch from home. This is Friday the 3rd. Just click on that and then you can get your tickets. Now, by the same token, say, oh, I can't make it 8:10 Eastern time because that's 5:10 and I'm still driving in from work. So press Saturday night show, the 4th, and look, 10:20 Eastern time, watch from home. And 10:20 in the West Coast is comfortable at 7:20 on a Saturday. Um, buy one ticket. I'm not saying that you should buy two, but if you buy one ticket, gather around with your family and friends, put it up on the big screen, watch Emil Amok, Lost NPR host. And that's the final show, the 4th, Saturday the 4th, the final show of this run, 7-show run. And it's been great. But this is how you buy your tickets. It's on this site here, Emil Amok, Lost NPR host, at the Frigid.NYC site. and just look for my smiling face and then click on it and then scroll down. Got to scroll down to the calendar. And so whether you pick March 3rd or you pick March 4th and you click on that and you get your ticket, click on that and you see how you can get your ticket. Hey, $15. What a steal. What a steal for watching it streamed. That's all you're asking for, Emil? I know I could ask for more, but no. I want you to experience this. It's Lost NPR host found under St. Mark's. Check it out. And it's a good show. It's not a bad show. And look, a guy who bought a live stream ticket because he's a good guy is my friend Daniel Phil Gonzalez. He joins me now. Daniel Phil, you saw the show live stream. What did you think?
I really liked it.
Yeah,
Of course, parts of your show I've seen before, and other
yeah.
parts you've modified and grown along with your coverage of your life, the way that it's gone. The compliments that you've received are full of hints on where you can deepen, your
Mm.
treatment of
Deepen to go
subject matter.
a deeper
Deepen.
dive. All right,
Well,
but
two of them mentioned their interest in Philippine history and that colonial relationship. So
yeah. Well,
I think that's pretty good.
there's a lot of people who don't know that, and that's what people have been telling me that, hey, no one knows this stuff. I mean, you gotta do it. But one thing, Dan, uh, and look, I'm gonna give you this. Well, one of the things about doing the live stream, and it's different from this, where I'm close up all the time. It's sort of when you get the live stream, it's like you're in the theater looking from a seat, looking down, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you see you see my full body. Not that people are craving, wanting to see my full body, but
Well, as long as you have pants on, I think we're good.
I think we're good. Well, that's the thing about this thing. Most people say, "Well, I'm only good from the top," but you get the theatrical experience is my point, and then
Yeah,
it's like being in the theater, right?
yeah, yeah.
And except you're safe and you're 3,000 miles away, or in the case of Hawaii, 6,000 miles away. So you definitely should, wherever you are, or in the Philippines or Europe or wherever, you can click on live. You don't have to be in New York City where I am, but get on the live stream, see it, and as Dan says, it's almost as good as being with me, right? Almost.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Sure.
mean, I mean, you get the audiences laughing, and they were laughing, right?
Yep. At
Yeah.
that at the right points. But there was some people, some individuals
Hmm.
on the evening that I watched it
Hmm.
that actually got more than others. In other words, they laughed appropriately, but
Hmm.
almost
Hmm.
singularly. Maybe others were chuckling or something, but there was one
Yeah.
person who LOL'd, right, and
They
I
got it.
thought that person got it, yeah, and they got
Yeah.
it a lot, and they
Yeah.
weren't just doing it to be nice.
Yeah.
They were really enjoying it. So,
One thing, Dan, is that it's a mixed crowd, and there's whites and there's non-whites. A
ew,
hand,
ew, don't use that term.
well, there a handful of Filipinos did show up throughout, and one of whom, Lloyda Lewis, was there at the show
Oh,
uh,
cool.
last Thursday, which is cool. I always like seeing Lloyda in person. I see her like since the pandemic. I haven't seen her really in 3 years.
She's retired now, right?
Oh yeah,
She's no longer heading up Beatrice and all
yeah.
that stuff.
She sold Beatrice a while ago, so she is just a lady or a woman of leisure, as they say. But a patron of the arts clearly, and she enjoyed the show. We had a little. She joined for the. We have these little mini after parties if you're in New York City, and so we had a nice conversation. A lot of people, some of my friends from college showed up, and we should have a nice crowd on Friday. Who said that they were going to be there at the show, as well as people, Asian Americans, um, Filipinos, a nice mixed crowd, and so. Uh, it's funny how you say there are some people who know the history, there's some people who don't. The more they know about the history of the Philippines and how I uh, blended in with the history of Emil Guillermo, there's some people who really get it, and some people just get it a little bit, and some people are kind of astonished that this history exists.
Yeah, well, there's other harsher moments in that history, bloodier,
Yeah,
that you might want to inject into your coverage because it's, a lot of it's really shocking. If you really don't know the history, it's really shocking. Now, the other thing is, a lot of people who learned their history about the relationship between the U.S. and the Philippines, if they learned it in the Philippines, if they're of a certain age, they may not have gotten the information that we get here, and that we've been putting out ever since the beginning of ethnic studies programs,
right.
College of Ethnic Studies. Uh, Families here were shocked
Yeah,
when our students went home and talked about some of the really racist statements being made in the American public sphere of the media, newspapers predominantly.
yeah,
The origin of National Geographic, for
mhm,
example, and those kinds of treatments were done in order to place Filipinos in the same category as First Nation people, as we refer to them now, and
yeah,
blacks
yeah,
and people of African descent generally.
yeah,
Uh, and they called us that. I mean, the N word was used to describe Filipinos. And I have a 1938 or so dictionary,
mhm,
and noun two are other people of darker races, and they mention both Indians of India
mhm,
and Filipinos
yeah. So
in the
that's
definition of the N
yeah.
word.
See, people don't understand that, and because they barely know what's happening now, right? So if they have
Oh
some
yeah,
kind of awareness of what's going on now, that's kind of a plus. But if you understand the context historically, you say, "Oh my God, this is why it is the way it is," which is how I got into the history. But overall, I'm glad you enjoyed the show. I'm glad you liked it. So even live streaming, it's still a good experience.
yep, yep. There's
Yeah.
a lot of ways that we'll chat it up when you get back.
Yeah, well, I do appreciate that, and I do like some of your insight about what you culled from what some of the people are saying. Anyway, thank you for that. Number two, I'm here, and I'm surprised that I'm handling the COVID thing pretty well. I mean, it's still not as high as it was at the peak, during the pandemic. I mean, it's down, but for people of a certain age, myself included, it's a problem, and I'm just happy that I've managed to stay COVID free for the last couple weeks.
Yeah,
So
I'm happy as well.
yeah, well,
Yeah, I mean, it's the plane ride,
yeah.
that worries myself and my wife, of
Really,
course.
the plane ride, I've heard that, well, because the filters used are, supposedly better, but, I was masked up. I was fine for there, but, also I'm eating in places like not very often, but when I do, I'm masked, and then when I eat, I'm unmasked, and then sometimes you get a little, sloppy, and you don't always like mask back up, and so you're always susceptible. Or I'm in the theater, for goodness sakes. I haven't been in a theater for 3 years, and here I am, and I have to say it's exhilarating to be there. I mean, the crowds. It's a smallish theater, so if I get you know 20, 30, 40 people in the theater, that's still in a small theater, that's a lot. I mean, which there's some spacing, but uh, I feel fortunate that I've been free of the virus. I'm awfully vaxxed, but here I got a tip from some guy. He said, take oil of oregano, the OOO treatment. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't.
Oh. Oil of oregano is an antifungal. It's a it's an has these super antioxidant qualities, and so uh, and this is I've been hearing it from more than one person. Maybe we all go to the same organic food store or something, but the OOO treatment, the oil of oregano treatment, is like the thing, and or it's what people talk about if they're looking for natural kinds of remedies against colds mostly, but You try it against COVID. And so oil of oregano, look it up. It tastes nasty. It's like oregano, except a very concentrated dose. So you feel like having about 10 vegan pizzas after you take it. You say, oh, I got to get this taste out of my mouth. I need pasta or something. But oil of oregano, OOO. I I don't want to say I swear by it, but it's another thing, right? On top of all the other things that you take and the vaccines and all that. It's an antiviral supposedly. That's how I'm handling the COVID scene. I'm happy because I go out at night in the theater. I've only done 5 performances. I'll do 2 more Friday and Saturday, and I'm expectorating. I'm putting it out there. I'm. Oh, I also have a microphone, so I'm not like putting it out there that hard. Like if I were really trying to, you know, reach the back of the room. But a concern that I had, fortunately, I've been able to avoid it. And I went to the Whitney Museum. They had this big exhibit, Edward Hopper, closing this week. But here's the thing about Hopper. Edward Hopper's closing, but they don't have that one big, that diner. Uh, are you familiar with Edward Harper's work? There's that shot of a diner that he does,
No,
and oh, anyway, it's a famous one. When you see it, you'll know it. But it's Edward Harper's New York, and the most famous Edward Hopper that almost everyone knows, not there. Apparently, it's in Chicago. Anyway, I was at the Whitney.
it's strange.
I was at the Whitney yesterday, and a lot of people, and I was masked. I was one of the few, but I was masked for the most part. So you got to be
Well, the
in the
few is
conscious.
better than none. So
Yeah,
there were
yeah.
others who were also. Did you see an age, any
Oh
indication of their
yeah.
age grouping?
The older ones were
There you go.
masked. Yeah,
That's only common sense.
yeah,
We're the ones who, are at greatest risk, and our numbers are the highest
yeah,
among those who have suffered not only the symptoms but have actually passed away as a
yeah,
result of
yeah. I mean,
contracting.
I just think that I'm trying to be responsible, and no one has challenged me or anything like that. No one has been aggressive in that way. But there's been a lot of people in the media now, saying, hey, what's wrong with this vaccine stuff? The anti-vax message is out there, but I'm holding steady. That you can sort of do both. You can be out in the world, and you can be responsible, and you have a sense of public health. I think that's the responsible thing to do. So,
Well,
anyway,
you're not going to get any disagreement from me, that's for sure.
yeah. Well, Dan, I one thing I like about I said in my Inquirer.net column, you can go see it. Go to Inquirer INQUIRER.net and look up my name, Emil Guillermo. I wrote that I gave up on my I for Lent. I'm giving up my life. I'm becoming an actor. So that's what I'm doing. These 45 days or so that I'm here in New York. So I'm doing this show, and then I'm doing another show that features Ishmael Reed. But during this time, I haven't been looking at the news really as intently as I used to, or as I usually do. And I think that's healthy. I think that's kind of healthy that I don't spoil my not spoil, but tax my brain with everything that comes down the pike that might deserve some kind of reaction. And it's almost like a news fast of a sort. So I feel kind of blessed in that way. So only want to talk about some things that have hit me that I think are worth having a conversation about. We talk about Asian Americans. What do you think about? What do you make about the Asian Americans who've decided to run for president so far? Two Indian Americans. Uh,
Well,
hit,
first of all, it's indicative of the position that Indian Americans occupy now
mm,
in American society generally, and in particularly in the political sphere
yeah.
as well. And they have arisen much faster in the ranks of the politically active people who actually take on candidacy, which is quite a challenge.
Hmm.
Uh, it it also means that they know they have the means to be able to run a successful campaign.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean the money.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there a correlationship? A good social scientist would ask, is there a correlationship
Yeah.
between the socioeconomic position that is occupied by Indian Americans and the fact that they're showing up as candidates not only at the national level but as at the local level as well in several states, and some of which aren't typically places where there are substantial numbers of Asian Americans who might be uh, voters. Maybe if we consider ethnicity, right,
Yeah.
or national origin for immigrant communities, why is this possible for them? Secondly, she's running as a Republican.
Yeah.
Okay, and I she's got one of the surveys I saw was like 4%, possibly, all the rest of that
Mhm.
stuff. But she's going to be running up against the T Man, of course,
Yeah.
and I can't wait to see how he takes all these people on. He is a slaughtering machine, right?
Yeah,
He
but one of the things that I've heard other people suggest is that maybe she really is running to be his number two. That,
Yeah, to be running to be Veep. I don't
yeah,
know. Let's see how he deals with her,
yeah,
because he may smear her so badly that it would be ridiculous for her to then say, "Okay, you can come on and be my Veep."
yeah,
Uh, yeah, I don't have much. I don't put much store in Veeps.
yeah.
Not
Well, she,
historically, anyway.
well, she wants to be president. She's always said that. There she is, and she talks about the need for generational change. But oddly enough, there's one guy, this guy Vivek
Yeah.
Ramaswamy, coming up who's saying, "Yeah, I'm the new generation of Nikki Haley, and move out of the way, Nikki Haley." It's almost like here's another Indian American who's got all the credentials, all the Harvards and all the, he's got money, he's got the backing of Silicon Valley. I don't know. What do you make of this Vivek guy, Vivek Ramaswamy?
I haven't researched enough about him. I have an article up, but I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
I,
but
I don't I
what do you?
don't know enough to comment on him. But he's got the usual Ivy League stuff going, right? And
Yeah,
once again, we have Ivy Leaguers, particularly in the Republican Party, who decry, right, the Democrats as being the party of elites, and the people who have the loudest mouths in the
yeah,
Senate are all Ivy Leaguers. I think out of 8 of them that are the loudmouths, ranging from Cruz and Hawley, of course, to everybody else,
mhm,
6 of them went to Harvard,
yeah.
and mostly for postgraduate work, right, for
For
law
law, well, the
degrees.
legal
Yeah,
side. Yeah, I think Holly was a Yale guy.
yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I just think that Ramaswamy represents a new generation of Asian Americans because he is also one of the strongest out there, out of the box, saying, I'm anti woke and proud of it. I'm anti affirmative action. He is like the emergence of an Asian American from the same kind of virus as the anti affirmative action folks who fought Harvard, as all of the Asian Americans who are conservative and are coming out very, really, almost, they're the opposite of where Asian Americans were, say, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It's a new generation. It's anti woke and it's conservative, and I think it's kind of appalling.
Well, you kind of got to expect it. I think I made an emphasis a couple of minutes ago of the
Mm,
money thing, right?
yeah.
The socioeconomic position, and people in millionaire or billionaire status that have socioeconomic position also have social and political sway. So
Mhm,
there's a direct connection. And
mhm,
the likelihood that they're going to be of a certain variety of capitalists, right? There's different
mhm,
forms of capitalism, and there are different ways of practicing capitalism. But people who have come from the former colonies and
mhm,
neo colonies, of Western powers, those people who have ascended through those systems, right, will come to
Mhm.
the United States and practice what I consider to be the potentially most successful, and at the same time, I don't want to use the word abusive, but let's say uh, very authoritarian forms of capitalism,
Mhm.
and that brings them. When I use the word authoritarian, that brings them right into the CEO becomes candidate uh, bucket of potential political winners.
Yeah.
Uh, so I mean, I'm just surprised that Elon Musk hasn't gone ahead and decided he wants to run for office,
Well,
right?
it's at some point someone's going to want to do a Trump thing where I don't really want to win, but it's great exposure, right? I mean, and then he wins, and that was the big surprise. I mean, that always
Yeah.
has been the thing with Trump. He never wanted to be president. It was always just a stunt. Oh my God, I won. Now what do I do? And he made America not great again, but he made America more unstable, more divided, and um, he's made everyone question and doubt the viability of a modern democracy, which is, was we never got to that point ever with previous presidents, but this is from the executive level, wondering, oh, is this democracy really sustainable? People are wondering that now. They heretofore that hasn't happened.
Yeah, yeah. You said earlier you mentioned that he's anti woke, and he's very strong. He wrote a book, right?
Yeah, I mean that's
Woke
his
Inc.
thing. His thing is
Yeah,
anti-woke.
that's his main thing.
Yeah.
So he being anti woke. Okay, I use this exercise when people want me to explain what woke is. I said, woke is different from wokeism. Wokeism is a really tortured corruption of the
Mhm.
term woke as it emanated from the African American communities. Okay,
Mhm.
so like a lot of slang terms, that come into the general vernacular, woke emanated from the black community. All you have to do to understand wokeism or anti-wokeism, right? Because people who use the term woke never came up with the term wokeism.
Mhm.
Okay, that was an invention that came from the critical anti-woke perspective.
Mhm.
Well, all I do is I substitute, in my case, either Filipino or Asian or the N word, okay, or non white, as you used earlier.
Mhm.
And every time somebody says woke, okay,
Mhm.
so, woke position, wokeism, just substitute a person of color, an ethnicity, a non white, okay, or any of that, and you will see how woke has been twisted, okay,
Mhm.
into a concept that has actually the opposite meaning of what woke was intended to describe.
Right.
Uh,
It actually becomes yeah, a negative, you
yes, it
know,
is. It
toward
is. It's corrupted.
people of color, toward blacks, toward
Yes,
Filipinos.
yes, and it's not even as soft a term as colored was
Yeah.
back in the pre civil rights era. Okay,
What it is, it's a kind of euphemism for racism.
it is absolutely. Like I
You know.
said, all you got to do is substitute your favorite people of color, and it works every time they use it. Every time they use it. So I would even go as far as say, okay, Woke Incorporated, that book should be retitled N or Other, N word or Other Incorporated, because that's what it really means. Okay, it means to say I am a person of color. Well, because obviously he's a South Asian, and
Mm.
he's of ancestry, and he's not light skinned.
Mhm.
Okay, but he's saying I'm exceptional because I'm anti woke.
Right.
Therefore, I'm a safe N word.
He's yeah, he's the
He's a safe
exceptional,
N
right.
word. Well,
Right.
I heard that from our own community leaders, the Filipino American community, man.
Yeah.
Leading people who took on. In fact, some of them are still on state commissions.
Yeah.
But back in the '70s and '80s, when for the first time, people like Jesse Jackson were running for office,
Mhm.
in the '80s, they used the N word and say,
Yeah.
"What does the N word, want?" And I said, "I think he wants to be president." Whether or not he's running an effective campaign for that, okay, is different. But
Yeah.
they're saying it's impossible for him to win. So what does he really want, right?
Mhm.
And they hated him for that, for just
Yeah.
wanting whatever it was that they didn't understand he was trying to accomplish.
Well, what does if Waswami can't really become president? What does he want? He just wants to like get this idea out there that hey, uh, diversity is a he wants to point out that diversity is a sham. That he is a dark white conservative. That he is a that's why I call him the dark white
Dark
conservative.
white, that's pretty good. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, because I don't want to call him an uncle this or an uncle that, which
Yeah,
is like an older phrase that has been used. It's kind of derogatory, but I
it,
call him
it is.
the
It
dark,
is intended to be derogatory, but softly derogatory.
right. But it's, you're really talking about darker white conservatives. And in the past, the darker white conservatives were people like Clarence Thomas, were
Yep,
people like uh, Ben Carson,
yep.
Herman Cain, the darker white conservative, and uh, Marco Rubio is a darker white conservative. Uh, for Asians, that hasn't really been a thing yet, but now it is. It's our turn, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there have always been conservative and even ultra conservative Asians. They've always been around.
Mm.
We can look at the Japanese American community and look at the division in
Right,
the Japanese community, and they weren't even harsh conservatives, but there were people who were anti reparations.
right.
All they wanted was the apology, and that was enough. They thought that going for reparations would encourage people to again attack Japanese Americans, because they didn't want anybody getting reparations. Why should anybody get reparations?
Right.
And there were people who still went on television and said, "I have proof, right, that Japanese were spies, and that
Mm.
there is evidence that justifies their having been put in concentration camps."
But it's important to know the distinction that there were people who weren't for the reparations within the Japanese and
Japanese
Asian
American
American
community, yeah.
communities because they didn't want to push that far. But fortunately there were people who did.
Well, and the force behind that came from the second and third generations.
Right.
You
Right.
know, it didn't come from the Issei, and it didn't come that much from the Nisei, only a bit. Okay, it
Mhm.
really came from the Sansei and Yonsei generations, the third and fourth generations.
Right.
Uh,
So people who wanted justice for the family usually, I mean, and isn't that the case? Because I talk about it, a version, a Filipino version, where my father, even though he might have experienced first generation, all the discrimination, he was fine with being a citizen. He was fine with going through it. He was fine with just like, just let me in.
yeah.
And,
Well, that's
if
something
there's,
that I think you might want to play up in your show as
yeah,
well. That
yeah,
contradiction.
yeah. Well, I talk about it.
Sharpen it.
I
You
don't.
do, but I think it could be sharper. It could be,
Yeah, well, I agree. I mean, because that's part of the whole thing with the show that I do, that it's someone from a subsequent generation trying to figure out what's happened or why does this happen. And when you realize that this is the way it's always happened,
yeah,
this is the
that's
pattern.
right.
This is the
It's a
pattern. You're stuck
pattern.
with this
Yeah,
pattern.
absolutely.
The,
That's absolutely the way I teach it, and I have always taught it. That you
right,
look at patterns, right?
right.
And here's a repeated pattern. Not only that, your father was not alone.
Yeah,
You know
yeah. It wasn't.
that entire generation is best known
Now,
for its Americanism.
now
You know,
the numbers. I've seen the 30,000 figure is in the group in California.
right?
Is it more than that nationwide, or is it about that was the largest group, and then they were the first to
That was the
settle?
largest group, but it was up to 45,000
Yeah,
nationwide. So
yeah,
so
and it was the first group that settled, the first en masse. I mean, there were little settlements in other places like Louisiana, but the first major. settlement of Filipinos came in that generation.
That generation, and obviously Hawaii,
Yeah.
California, and the state of Washington.
Right.
Seattle had a early, and it had a lot to do with where the ships went.
Right. Right.
Before 1929, the ships came out of Hawaii or out of Tokyo or that area, Japan, and some went to Seattle, and others went to
Yeah.
LA and San Diego. So they didn't start coming to San Francisco directly in huge numbers until the stock market
30s.
crash. The
Oh,
stock market
after
crash. Yeah, they
after the
started coming
late
here.
20s. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, we'll get back more to the play, but I just wanted to talk about Haley and Ramaswamy
yeah,
as
man. They come
we're gonna,
from upper
I
class. They
mean,
come from upper class. Upper socioeconomic means.
yeah.
They're Republican, and they feel there's a lane for them there. I think it's kind of strange. I think it's funny. I mean, it's funny when I saw Clarence Thomas,
Hmm.
going through what he was going through, particularly the challenges from women
Hmm.
on his notable misogyny and all that, or alleged misogyny,
Yeah.
uh, and then now with the disclosure that his wife was so much a part of the MAGA crowd,
Right.
and really extreme, quite
Yeah. Oh
frankly,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
then his refusal to recuse.
Hmm.
I don't know how much more you need to make an argument that there are problems with the so-called conservative element on the Supreme Court. So
Yeah.
I think they need to keep on doing it. I think the more cases that go before the Supreme Court that show the unconstitutional side
Hmm.
of their thinking, right? I
Hmm.
mean, it's
Hmm.
blatantly unconstitutional, right?
Yeah.
But they're the guys who get to tell you whether or not what they're doing is constitutional.
Yeah. Well, I
Okay.
mean, this is the thing. Now we used to see the blacks leading the way as the dark conservatives. Now we're seeing Asian Americans,
It was
specifically
bound to
even.
happen. It was bound to happen. We
Yeah.
we we are overall Asian Americans overall are the closest thing to white. And look at how socioeconomically and politically.
Yeah.
Look at how they're being treated in the media.
Yeah.
Ever since the '80s, the media, and I'm talking about not just daily newspapers. I'm talking about
Mhm.
the news magazines like Time and Newsweek and
Right.
all that. They would come forward with articles that talked about how Asian Americans were supernumerary in the major universities of the nation.
Right.
That they were hyper competitive and that they were highly qualified for the STEM areas. Right? They didn't call them STEM at the time, but
Yeah.
but heavily numerous in the sciences
Yeah.
and and engineering. Um, it was obvious that Japanese American men
Yeah.
were in significant numbers even before the arrival of Chinese immigrants, right, from mainland
Mhm.
China. Remember what happened with the Wen Ho Lee case,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? When people were going after him with false accusations,
Right.
and it nearly cost him his life. And then it was dismissed eventually because the case was without merit and highly prejudicial, and it was worked up in the media. So
Yeah.
we have solidly a 30 to 40 year period where Asian Americans, either as a group or as specific ethnic groups, right, and particularly Chinese and Japanese Americans, and then eventually Korean Americans, and now Indian Americans, they have been noted to be very successful at getting admission to the most important universities in the country. And these two candidates are proof of that.
Yeah.
And they're also in the upper brackets of
Income
annual
wise.
income, right? That's
Yeah.
right.
All right. So, what are you named these ethnic groups? You didn't name Filipino groups.
I did
You didn't
not.
name the Filipinos.
I did
Well,
not.
why is that? Why is that Why are we not included
Be,
generally?
because Okay, number one, we've been here longer than, in numbers
Mhm.
than everybody except the Chinese.
Right.
The Japanese Americans up until the 1960s, right, with the opening of immigration, 1965.
Mhm.
Well, it was passed in 65. Um, the Japanese Americans were the most numerous Asian American population. Okay,
Mhm.
and the Chinese and Filipinos came second and third. But we were here, and we were here in substantial numbers. Okay, but it was a largely male population, a small family-based population until after 1950. Okay,
Right.
and then the family-based population began to expand. Then came the Immigration Reform Act, right? 65. And after 65, the two biggest groups who continue to be among the largest populations in American society were the Chinese and the Filipinos. Okay. So we've been here longer in greater numbers than South Asians. Okay. We've been here longer and in greater numbers than South Koreans. Okay. But our participation at the strongest levels of state and national politics has been minimal. Okay, has been minimal,
Right.
and that's why I don't mention us, because in point of fact, we have not been as active on the political front locally in several cities and a couple of states. We've been fairly active, but on a national level, we have not been
So,
that active. We haven't
so,
put candidates up to be noted for that. And
so Dan, why is that? I mean, this is why we got to look at people like Rob Bonta, who's the
he's an
California Attorney
exception.
General. He
He's
was,
exceptional.
yeah, he's the outlier. But why haven't there been more? It just, I mean,
I
that
think we have constant immigration and that immigration culture, right? That immigrant culture.
Mhm.
Again, this is a pattern that does not just apply to Filipinos, but there are certain specific elements of Filipino culture that make us susceptible to uh, being wanting to stay out of the limelight. Okay, it's fine for us to be in the limelight if it's all about singing and dancing, right?
Mhm.
If it's
Mhm.
about theater, maybe occasionally athletes. Okay,
Mhm.
it's fine to do that, but we don't want to be seen as doing things that are anti-American or that challenge any aspect of the American condition. That is a major element of the psyche, if we can generalize about the psyche of Filipino Americans.
So
This is one of
it's
the major reasons that I'm not popular in the Filipino American communities because I say these things.
but that means what you're saying is there's that colonial mentality that's crept in.
It's partially colonial mentality. It's sometimes it's difficult to separate what is a colonial effect, the effect of colonialism and neocolonialism, and what is indigenous to the
Mhm.
culture.
Right.
Okay, an indigenous aspect of the culture is a what NVM Gonzalez would call a profane occupation with social status and
Uh,
the appearance of social status.
mhm.
Okay, that's a major problem in the Filipino American community.
So as long as it looks good, if it looks good, then we'll go with it. But
Oh man! Now I'm not talking about the entirety, right, of our community, but there are
mhm.
too many people for whom uh, appearances, right, are a substantial factor in the way that they live their lives.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's a kind of cultural shallowness, right? That
Well, it comes out of being poor.
yeah,
It comes
yeah,
it comes out of poverty, or it comes out of the shame associated by for being associated with a society that is seen on a global level as being a third world, a poor society.
yeah.
Okay, and that's the saddest thing. uh, you got to look at the reasons for the poverty, right?
Yeah.
In any of the post-colonial and post-neo-colonial societies, you have to look at the reason for the poverty, and a lot of it is internal. A lot of it is structural,
Yeah,
and a
but
lot
you
of
know,
it is again the abusive behavior of the upper classes.
and the upper classes within the society, because you could
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
you take India as an example, huge poverty
Oh
there.
man.
And then, but we were just talking about how these Indian Americans who've come here, how they are, they want to be president of the United States.
Well, but
So,
they may come from that intermediate those intermediate castes
right, right.
that have mobility, right?
Boy, it's funny you mentioned that because Seattle just passed an
An
anti-caste.
anti-caste.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, caste, because the Indians are so prominent here, we have to be more aware of Indian culture in the United States and the discrimination that takes place
Oh
because
yeah.
of the kind of caste that they bring with them, or the
Yes.
idea of caste that they bring with them to the
Yes.
United States. I mean,
Oh
that's
yeah.
a phenomenon that, that's another kind of Asian racism that no one really expected to have to deal with here in
I
America.
I talk about Philippine society as being quasi caste society.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things I say, I ask my own students, okay, what do you when somebody asks who you are or where you're from, what are the questions that they ask? Because they always ask the same questions, or let's see if there's a pattern, is the way that I tease them into it. And they say, well, what's your name? Okay, so yeah, they get your surname. And then they
Mm-hmm.
go, well, what's your province? Where you come from in the provinces and
Mm-hmm.
all that. And so what are they doing? And they don't necessarily get it. And I said, that's the beginning of the triangulation, okay,
Mm-hmm.
of where you're from. If you're Promdi and you're from the provinces, you're looked down on.
Yeah.
Okay, there's already a class judgment being made because you're
Yeah.
not from central, you're not from Manila,
Yeah.
Metro Manila, or you're not from Cebu or one of
Yeah.
the other big cities, right? You're not,
Yeah.
you're from, you're a Promdi. There's an abbreviation, right? Promdi,
Yeah.
and it means
Yeah.
from the province, right?
Drumdy.
Is what
Yeah.
it stands for. And so
Yeah.
right away you're being semi caste oriented, right? Okay,
Yeah.
then you have to tell them which Gonzalez family from Tarlac, and I say let me just tell you this. I
Mm.
am descended from Spanish post conquest, right?
Yeah.
Spanish immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
But the second and third generations, their second and third generations blew their land holdings. So that the vast majority of the people were relatively poor, but the
Mm-hmm.
post Second World War generations, right, rebuilt some level, right, of socioeconomic status.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's who we are. But if
Yeah.
you want to know, I'm the descendant of the putangeros and
All
bartaquero
right, we
Gonzalez
don't have to go
family.
that deep, but that's interesting. I mean, that is the Filipino way. Anyway, I just want to bring up the cast thing because
Yeah,
it
but
I
it's not.
started hearing about the last just within the last couple of years. I think Isabel Wilkerson's book talks about
Yeah,
caste,
that's right.
and now we've got this thing in Seattle, and that for people who are anti woke, they'll say, "See, they're like they're so woke now. They're talking about caste now."
Yeah, well,
But
it's real.
I think
It's
it
real.
is real. You got an Indian manager who's in STEM, and he believes in caste, and you're coming up, and you are in a different caste. You will get discriminated against, and there needs to be a way to talk about it in America. So,
There are certain cultures that are much more open to that kind of caste or caste like behavior.
mhm.
And I'm just saying, there's a strong relationship between Filipino culture and Indian culture when it comes to that. There is
Yeah,
an indigenous element.
I believe it. I know it. All right, so Dan, let's switch really quickly to another big story that I've been noticing when I've been out here. I mean, we'll talk about the heavy stuff a little later, but this Dilbert thing, Scott Adams.
Oh God.
For one, I think he's like playing up. He wants to do it to extricate himself from a strip that no one reads, that no one cares about, and he's just trying to play up his fame one last hurrah, which is really a Razzie, because I mean to say that blacks are a hate group based on the facts that from
Yeah.
some conservative poll, I mean it's
Stay
just
away from
ridiculous.
from. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, I what he said was racist, but it's not that racist. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
kind of an intermediate, if you want to interpolate levels of racism, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and so it's provocative enough that he's going to get dropped.
Yeah.
I never like. I'm with you. I never liked Dilbert in the first place. In
Yeah.
fact, last week, while I was browsing through the Sundays, right?
Mhm.
Because we get the Times and we get the
Mhm.
Chronicle, and I'm browsing through, and I said, you know what, comics suck now.
Yeah, they're
they're not just
bad.
they're bad. They're terrible. It's not even worth looking. You
I
know.
mean, bring back Prince Valiant for goodness
Well,
sakes.
somebody, something,
Yeah.
well, you could color Prince Valiant up a little bit,
Yeah.
but 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 yeah, bring back Dick Tracy and his he's anti Miranda
Yeah. Well, the
position.
thing
Yeah,
the thing about Dilbert is that it it's not really funny, and it was about white corporate
yeah, slice
workplaces.
of life and corporate life. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I guess he didn't want to go the diverse route because he did have one black character though. I did a column on this, and he had a black character last week called Dave, who's the engineer, and the punchline for Dave was, he's black. He says, "I identify white," which is kind of funny. It's kind
So,
of funny, but it's also not very funny when you know it's coming from Scott
a white
Adams.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, but he's pointing at something that actually is only a slight exaggeration for a significant number of African Americans.
yeah, yeah.
You
I
know.
I know. I think I know some blacks who identify
Yeah.
white.
Well, who is Jim Brown?
Yeah,
The football player, right?
yeah,
Why? What are the positions that he takes? On the one hand, he talks about, yeah, there's racism out there, but you don't have to let it bother you.
yeah,
You just and there's a lot of people who take those positions.
yeah.
You
Well,
know,
I think that Dilbert just wants to do this, or Adams wants to do this. He wants to get the attention. We're giving it to him, but I don't think he's got much of a First Amendment argument because
nah,
he's
nah.
had his say, and now he's getting the backlash of the debate. Uh,
Yeah, and of course the right is going to call it cancel culture again, and all the rest of that.
well,
I
he
mean, it's
wanted to be
garbage
canceled.
arguments.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
wanted to be canceled. I mean, I think Filipinos get canceled on a regular basis. Uh, that's more serious than the cancellation of Scott Adams.
yeah,
So
that's right. And we got canceled out of the TSA by Dianne Feinstein.
yeah, what happened there?
Oh, don't you remember that? That's when after the 9/11, everybody was
Oh
looking
yeah,
at
yeah,
the airports, and they're saying,
yeah.
"Wow, man, what are all these brown people doing? Doing
Uh,
security." Okay, and then they went further and they found out that most of them weren't citizens.
yeah.
Okay,
Well,
at
look,
least in San Francisco at SFO, the majority of them were not citizens. They were legal residents,
yeah,
but they were not citizens. That's another aspect, by the way, of Filipino culture. That's their way of expressing that's their way of expressing Filipino nationalism.
oh yeah, to
Is
not
that
be the
I'm not gonna become an American because
right.
they're the colonizer, and they use it as an excuse. They're just freaking don't want to be involved in politics. That's what they said
Yeah,
during the when we on the workup to the 1984 convention. The Democratic
yeah,
convention was held here in San Francisco.
hmm
I held students. I said, how many people want to go out and in satisfaction for their term assignment, go out and do polls, go out and help sign people up to vote. And it's
not
not
that.
you're not signing them up for one party or the other. You're just getting them to sign up to vote. And a
Mhm.
lot of people volunteered. They said, "Yeah, I want to do that." So they went out and they started trying to circulate, ballots, ballot applications and all that, voting applications, and they went to the usual places, Sunday after church, supermarkets, that kind of thing, and and when they came back after the first week, people were really angry. A lot of the
Yeah.
students were really angry, and I said, "What? Well, okay, what happened?" And I knew what was going to happen, right? They said people didn't want to sign up. They didn't want to vote. They said it's not important. My vote doesn't count, right? I got more important things to do
See,
than vote. That
that's a generational thing.
well,
That's
it
going to
it
change.
was.
it's a
Yes, it was.
generational thing that needs to change. But look, we got into this. We were talking about Feinstein, and since we have
Yeah,
sort of
she's
done this
retiring. Yeah.
yeah, since we've done this intermittently the last couple of weeks, we missed out on talking about Feinstein. Uh, I don't know, Dan. What do you think? I think she is trying.
She's got a mixed record, but she was
Yeah.
more popular in Southern California when she first got elected than
Mhm.
she was up here.
Right, but what I mean is, I think she's trying to exert her influence as to who replaces
Oh
her
yeah,
by
yeah,
staying till the end, because
right.
now, it's an open race. No one gets a leg up. I guess it's fair, but if she had retired like right now, today, uh, Governor Newsom is beholden to a promise that he appoint a black woman, which would be Barbara Lee.
Barbara Lee from Oakland.
And
Yeah.
Barbara Lee would have had the same advantage as Rob Bonta, but now she doesn't because she has to run in the open against Adam Schiff, against Katie Porter.
Hmm.
It's going to
And
be tough for Barbara Lee.
the middle of the Republican Party is all lining up behind Schiff right now.
Yeah. Well,
So
see,
I
this
think
is
Pelosi has recommended Schiff. You know.
this is a problem. I think. Well, it's not a problem. It's just that for uh, people who are Barbara Lee fans, this was her moment to rise. If Newsom had to appoint someone. And had he appointed Barbara Lee, she might have had an opportunity to rise and be I think only the third African American woman. I mean, it's like ridiculous,
You mean
you
in the
know,
Senate? Yeah, ever?
yeah, in the Senate. And
Yeah.
so I think it's important that at least we know that on her exit, Dianne Feinstein exerted far more control than she deserved or that she needed. Her prerogative to play out the string, but I think she could have made history if she left. Newsom appoints this African American woman, Barbara Lee, make history, and then have the dogfight, between
Right.
Schiff,
Right.
uh, Katie Porter,
Porter.
and Barbara
Yeah.
Lee. But I just think it's unfortunate. Uh, uh, as far as, let's see,
Well,
I
What do you have a preference on either one of those of the three?
well, I like to see Barbara Lee um, get a shot at the Senate. I mean, I think it's
Right.
first of
Right.
all, it's really sad that there's only been three African American women. I think for an African American female politics this week, it's been a bad week. Uh, the mayor, Lori Lightfoot in Chicago, she lost,
Yeah.
although it was kind of predictable because a lot of people didn't like her.
No.
I mean, she was liberal, she was tough. Um, I think people didn't like her because as they say, the bedside manner,
Right.
was slightly
Right.
off with Lori Lightfoot. I mean, and not it didn't have anything to do with her, her gender or sexuality or anything. It just has to do with personality.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't
It's
like her.
another one of those situations. It's like Davis in California. You know,
Yeah, Ray
when she,
Davis.
yeah.
Yeah, when he got ousted. Oh, well, I feel sorry for Lori Lightfoot because she was a progressive. She did some good things, um, but she's by not
Well, I think
being
that's part of the problem. There's an anti-progressive reaction, and
right, right.
she's a victim of that.
Well, it's
Also, they had
sad.
some really tough issues in Chicago. You know, with
Oh
guns,
yeah, with the cops and with the
the
crime.
cops. Yeah, man, nasty cops,
Yeah,
criminal cops.
right. Well,
Education, the school
yeah,
system, right? Really, really tough. And
I mean,
those are tough problems in all of the big cities. You know.
yeah. Well, given all that, I think her record says she deserved another shot at the job, but
And she
this
was
is why I
way
think
behind, man. Those two initial polls
yeah,
put her like one was sub 30%, and
yeah.
the other was sub 40.
In the end, it's likability, and then you got other
The
guys that
perception of strength too,
yeah.
unfortunately. You know,
Well, yeah,
perception of
yeah,
strength,
yeah,
and that's where again, personality wise, she just didn't come across as strength, and part of that is the masculinity syndrome. You know,
yeah.
uh, women just aren't seen as having the capacity for for strength.
Yeah.
It's all
Well, I
measured
mean,
in
and now
masculinist terms.
we should transition to the presidential because here's
Okay.
Joe Biden who's getting.
Well, and he's going to get whacked with not being strong too. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
that
mean,
was one of the major things. Even Democrats didn't think we were strong enough. You
well,
know, North Carolina, South
it's
Carolina. Yeah, no,
it's ageist. You know, it's ageist. It's not fair. I mean, Biden has done a hell of a lot considering what he
no
had to
kidding.
do.
he
I mean,
took. He,
that's what I don't get. But now he's
well,
involved
because
in
he had a Democratic controlled Congress, right? He had
right,
both houses to support
right,
him. He got a
right,
whole hell lot more done than Obama.
right,
But
right, right,
in 2 years,
right.
okay.
Uh,
But
yeah,
uh,
unbelievable.
you know, the hatred that comes from the right, anywhere from not only the extremists but from the center right, you know,
Hmm.
the I would never vote for a Democrat, right? You know,
Yeah,
it is freaking simpletons, man.
yeah.
But you know,
I mean, Biden is about as centrist as it gets, really, and and he should have appeal, a broad appeal. And so for what he's done, he's getting whacked on hard. And I, I especially look. Let's talk briefly also about how he's meeting with Laryov and the Soviet Union. I mean, this whole thing with Ukraine, people are now finally addressing it. You know, and where I am in New York right now, I'm in a real Ukrainian section. There's
okay,
like there's Ukrainian restaurants. There's Ukrainian people and uh, Ukrainian flags. I mean, I'm glad to see that throughout the country, uh, there more people are understanding the situation there. But the polls are suggesting that people are losing their appetite to back the war, and that's going to be a problem for Biden.
yep.
So I
Well,
don't know. How do
it's
we?
going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem if we start cutting back on our support for Ukraine. It's going to be a bigger problem for the U.S. Internationally
Yeah.
than people are willing to understand. One of the problems with not just COVID, but with
Mm,
all of the issues that were caused directly by Trump and his behavior and his acolytes' behaviors,
mm,
is that it took away from people's attention looking at international issues
right.
and circumstances. So unless it was a relatively extreme moment, like a large scale protest that was cracked down on, resulting in thousands of people going to jail, and it would only be a momentary coverage. There would not be, you know, real strong analysis about what was going on. And even the withdrawal from Afghanistan, for example, did not get the kind of analysis that it should have gotten, you know,
Yeah.
with references to the Russians, and how they had lost a huge amount of their economy due to their decades long right attempt to rule Afghanistan.
Yeah. Well, I think
So
people were willing to, accept a short war, and then the longer it goes, people say, "Well, it's still happening. What's going on?" And I think
right,
they
that's
don't
right.
get it. And then now, when you hear Republicans say, "Well, no more money," people get confused. They say, "Aren't we? Shouldn't we be united about this?" And then they get all nationalistic or isolationist and say, "Well, why do we want to spend money there? We spend money."
Yeah, well, and all they have to do, all we have to do, you and I, all we
Mhm.
have to do is review in our heads how isolationism worked out throughout the whole 20th century,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Starting in the late 19th century and working all the way through up to the middle of the 20th century, isolationism was the reason that we got in wars, in world wars, one and
yeah,
two, and
yeah,
Vietnam. You know,
yeah.
you know,
So I just hope that we work our way through this, but I don't. If someone other than Biden's there, I mean, if Trump is back there, what kind of world would we be? Would we have if Donald Trump is? I mean, just think of the 4 years he was in there and how the Russians had their way with Trump. It would be.
well, it wasn't just the Russians, though, was it?
Oh
It was
no, it
the
wasn't just
Chinese
it
and the
was.
North Koreans too.
Yeah, it just. I think, and I just hope that people understand from that
You know,
there are better options than that alternative, including sticking with the guy who's there now who knows how to keep us out of war.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, Joe
and
Biden.
also to earn the respect and mutuality
Yeah,
with other nations. He helped to rebuild NATO to a
yeah,
point where it was stronger than it was in probably at any time in the last 30 years.
yeah, and
You know,
just think about how weak NATO was when
yes, it
Trump was in
was.
office. How
Well, he
Trump
wanted to
had,
wipe it out, and the Republican Party wanted to wipe it out. Many
yeah,
members of the Republican Party came forward and said, "Yeah, we ought to be out of there. NATO isn't doing any work for
yeah,
us." Look at how
unbelievable,
they went after the United Nations. They
unbelievable.
continuously go after the United Nations.
Oh yeah,
Don't
yeah,
want to fund it,
so,
and then now they're caught in the problem of having both Russia and China in the Security Council, and
yeah,
guess who vote down any action taken by the United Nations to avoid war?
yeah.
Okay, it's
So see now,
those two groups.
see this is the real heavy stuff.
Yes, it
That's why
is.
we save it. That's why we save it to the end because there's no real answer. But
Well,
but
there is,
but
but it's a difficult answer. First of all, the Democrats have finally learned their lesson, and they need to step aside. People shouldn't be hanging in there until they're in their 80s. They should
mhm,
be grooming people, younger people, to take their place.
mhm,
And diversity. Their commitment to diversity was one of the reasons they got into younger people, because a lot of the people of color that are willing to run
mhm,
are of a generation younger,
yeah,
and they're starting to get coverage. They're starting to get really good coverage. I mean,
yeah,
the first two Native American women in Congress.
mhm,
And they're both really good
yeah,
at, at what they do politically. The squad, of course, right?
mhm,
That the right loves to hate,
mhm,
and they're going to be coming after Biden with all of his, being soft and being diversity oriented and all the rest of that stuff.
mhm.
One of the things that kind of worries me is where white women are, educated
Oh
white
yeah,
women, because you remember how
they're the
they went
key.
against Hillary. They were
They're the key.
anti-Hillary.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
they were anti-Hillary, and in California, remember when 209 came up, the
mhm,
so-called
yeah.
civil
The
rights initiative?
yeah
They
anti-affirmative action went.
white educated white women vote in favor of that.
Oh.
And
Well, this is
they were the best beneficiaries
yeah.
of affirmative action
This
on
is
a
the hard
statewide
thing.
level.
It changes, right? The evolution of the electorate. It changes.
Oh
So
yeah.
we'll have
Well,
to see where we are now. I mean,
my hope is in the younger folks. My hope
yeah,
is
younger
in the
folks.
people who are, yeah, just realizing 18 and 21 years old,
Yeah,
and I see a lot of them are signing up as independents, which I think is okay.
yeah. And also look, younger folks, but also the abortion question might bring over the women, the college
Yeah,
educated women.
yeah,
Maybe,
yeah,
maybe.
maybe,
But
maybe. I think
we'll
it did initially, and yeah. So I'm cheering on the extreme right that keeps on coming up with ways of the book banning and the schools trying to run the schools
yeah.
down at the university level with New College, and I want the right, and particularly people like DeSantis and people who again are scheming to become as successful as DeSantis seems to have been or
Hmm.
is being, like Cruz and Marco and all those folks, Hawley,
Yeah.
all those people. I want them to keep doing what they're doing. I
Oh
want
yeah.
them grandstanding, and I want them to keep borrowing from stuff that comes from QAnon, to argue. Hey, right on. Just go ahead. Keep
All
doing
right.
it, man.
So let's see if that works and changes things for the Biden and the Democrats. Hey, listen, Dan, I've kept
All
you
right.
on for more than an hour, but
Okay.
I want to talk to you offline. So just hang in there with me
Okay.
while I say goodbye here. So
All right.
don't go away. There's Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez, San Francisco State University, College of Ethnic Studies, Professor Emeritus, Asian American Studies, Filipino American Studies. And there he is, my dear friend, Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez. Thank you for being on Emil Amok's Takeout. There he goes. But he did go to my show, and that's how I want to close this. tell you that you can still get tickets for the show. It's March 3rd and 4th, Friday, March 3rd at 8:10 p.m. Eastern Time, but and Saturday at 10:10 Eastern Time. But you can get a live stream ticket. Now, how you say, how, Emil, can I get a live stream ticket if you're in New York? Well, here's the Frigid.NYC site. Look for my smiling face. Emil Amok lost NPR host found under St. Mark's and other stories. Hey, look, it costs more to be live than to be not live. So get a not live ticket. Yeah. And we have two more tickets. You got to scroll down, and there, March 2nd or March 2023. Just click on the Thursday. You want to go to Friday's show. There it is. And then on the screen, it says, oh, you can see 8:10 Eastern Time in person. But you're like in Hawaii. So how am I going to do that, Emil? I can't do. Okay, then press 8:10 Eastern Time, and then look, you buy a ticket. There it is. You can even do sliding scale in case you really want to say, look, I can't pay full price, Emil. I can't. All right, so then go sliding scale. There's ways to do this, uh, but this is how you do it. It's simple. It's as simple as that. You got to go to frigid.nyc, pick your date, right, and the date is on the calendar. There it is, March 3rd, March 4th. It's a good show. It's good. Professor Dan saw it. He says he likes it. He says he likes it. I think he does. Uh, and don't forget, click a date. Say Saturday, March 4th, 10:20 p.m. Eastern time. Now that, and just click on it, and that it's as easy as that to get your ticket from. As you scroll down from Emil Amok, NPR host, found under St. Mark's. Good show, interesting show. Get your tickets. Last two shows. And then after this, if you read my Inquirer.net article, INQUIRER.net, coming up March 9th, I'm in this new Ishmael Reed play called The Conductor, where it's the whole San Francisco woke school board story told in this theatrical way, an imaginary satire. It's funny. I play a small role, but you should check it out. You can see that online too. I'll be talking more about that coming up next week. So that's how you get tickets to see, or that's why I say, hey, look, I've given up my real life for Lent. I'm becoming an actor for 45 days. It's been fun. So, Cassius, I'll probably replay this tomorrow, or maybe I'll do a pop up. It depends. But anyway, show day tomorrow, March 3rd, and then the 4th. If you're in New York City, go to Under St. Mark's Theater, which is in the East Village, and buy a ticket there, or check out the frigid.nyc site and get a ticket. Okay, hey, look, regular listeners of this show know you can catch this on Twitter at Emil Amok. You can catch it on YouTube at Emil Amok1. You can catch it on Facebook at emilguillermo.media or my Emil Guillermo page. It's there, Facebook Watch. Thank you for joining us. If you missed any part of this, go to the replay. It'll also be on amok.com. I'm telling you, one thing that's helped me, besides oil of oregano, in terms of fighting the virus, I've been going into these deep trances, kind of like a self-hypnosis thing, and also a little meditation. Little meditation goes a long way. I'm telling you, loving kindness works. Think of someone you want to forgive. Think of someone you want to send love to. And then just say these simple phrases. And it works because as you say it toward others, it comes back to you. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time, catch us generally live or as live on tape. Till next time.